Hello and welcome to another episode of 𝘀𝗽𝗲 C-Suite, and we welcome a very special guest, Julian, who is a performance and sales coach, is joining us for a very special subject that we've got to cover in sales and consumer psychology. And I think, Julian, it's probably in introducing you and getting your thoughts on that. I mean, it's a big topic in many respects, and it's one that is, I guess, rapidly changing as we move towards a more of an online environment.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, look, the landscape of sales has changed quite dramatically over the last 20 years. I've been involved with it 20 years, and the sales and the sales approach to consumers 20 years ago versus it was 10 years ago versus 5 and now. We're dealing with a very, very sophisticated purchaser. A lot of these consumers are well aware of sales techniques and tricks, for a better word, and objection handling models, and on the other side of things, we're also dealing with a sort of a purchaser's advantage, where you walk into 𝘀𝗲𝗃𝗏, bought a drone on the weekend, and I went there, and the price on the list, I literally Googled it to make sure I could get a better deal. So I tell all my clients we need to be selling on value, but if you are in a retail section, a retail store, it's a very, very different market. Consumers, when they're going to buying a car, will probably know more about the car than the brand new sales rep, right? So it is a very, very different marketplace, and you need to adapt, or else you're going to be going behind.
It's an interesting space from my point of view as well, that what we've seen in recent years is consumers get more and more used to being talked to very specifically. So, in the past, it was a bit like, you take the landscape of television, for example. In the past, we had sort of 7, 9, 10 as commercial stations, and everyone was, the majority of the country was watching those 3 channels at night. So you would advertise everything on there because you really knew that everybody was watching. Now, again, looking at the television landscape, you're looking at something like Foxtel, and then you look at a very specific channels where there's not just lifestyle, it's the renovation channel or the cooking channel. So you're really narrowing in on who that is, and we're used to that as consumers. And so that psychology that you need, there's an expectation that you're going to be talked to more specifically. And I think that's requires a lot of thought from the people who are running the shops.
Absolutely. You go from a shotgun approach to a sniper, right? And you need to have, one of the biggest things, I've worked with some pretty large organizations, and the marketing does not match what the sales team's talking about, and vice versa. So when you've got marketing spend, usually what they're going to try and do is get an ROI, right? Or ROAS, right? But it's not. Yes, marketing is going to bring in leads and generate revenue, but it's your sales guys on the back of that really should be closing those deals. But if the marketing message doesn't meet with this, or the sales guys aren't talking the same, it's going to cause skepticism. It's going to be a difference in message and skepticism. People don't buy. People don't tell you why they don't buy. It just doesn't feel right, and then you lose the deal.
I've got a question on the process side, because obviously you mentioned that the sales landscape has changed dramatically. Even let's take just last 5 years, and previously, probably for the normal or average salesperson, the only process they had is just script and the phone and nothing else, and this was enough. So my question is, how more sophisticated sales processes became now, and how much technology is involved there?
Yeah, well, COVID's really opened it up around, selling online and vice versus email. So where it used to be sold purely over the phone, you might need to sell it through an email. I run a solar company as well, and we've sold via Zoom. We sell over the phones. I've sold deals purely by emails, never spoken to people. So you really need to understand the language and the vocab around what message you're trying to, have with the customer, as well as making sure that each touch point, everything that you say in a sales presentation leads you towards something, right? Are you moving away from the close, or are you moving them towards a close? A lot of companies are still not documenting their sales process, so they're going to have a script that's written by the last guy that was there, maybe, or they just get given a product and a brochure and then go sell it. And that's where you're going to find a lot of areas of business and growth, what I work on in Spartan Business Academy, and that performance. It's very, very easy to find companies that are killing it and to be honest, most they're leaving money at the table on every deal.
Julian, thanks very much so far and for the insights. One of the things you mentioned early on was to do with kind of sales guys running scripts, or sales guys and objection handling, I think is what the term is. How would you kind of discuss with someone, or how would you, for lack of a better word, coach or deal with someone who has issues in terms of that objection handling in the sales process? Would you clarify for us a little bit, please?
Yeah, so usually you want to sort of address common objections, and there's usually, depending on what product you sell, there's always going to be, 5 or 6 very, very common objections, and it takes you a week to work out which ones are what. You want to make sure that the process is eliminating as many objections as possible as you go through. So, I wrote a script for a client that we just started working with, and I tried it myself because every time I write a script, I always do it myself because I want to make sure it works. And I'm not going to lie, it was the worst one I've ever written. It was horrible. We went back to the drawing board. I literally grabbed it off the printer, chucked it in the bin, and just threw it out. And I've never done that before in my life, but it was just horrible. And this is someone with 20 years of experience thinking, I think this is going to work really well. Disgusting. Anyway, start again. So you want to make sure that your process now, in regard to the sophisticated purchaser, it's a very elegant process. So using sales techniques, feel, felt, found, and objection, I understand how you feel. Someone else felt the same way. And what I found, the reason why they're doing this is X, Y, Z. That's from 1980s. That's a 𝘀𝗲𝗃 salesperson, which I actually have used that on a 𝘀𝗲𝗃 salesperson, and he did go get his credit card. But anyway, but you want to make sure that your sales process is not, it doesn't feel like a sales process. And that's where your elegance and the natural conversation and the salesperson's individual dialogue really shines through. But you still need to make sure that your process delivers on the objection handling, because there's still going to be questions that a customer asks, but there will be very, very common, basically frequently asked questions. If you can bring that up early in the piece, let's say, we normally break down in sort of 5 or 6 different sections. You've got introduction, framing, what's the framework? This is what we're going to go through today. This is how it's going to be explained. And by the end of it, if there's any questions, I would love to get you to business. And at the end of it, let's see if we can do business together. Then you're going to have what problems are you facing, and you really qualify and dig deep into sort of, what problems are you facing? How's it affecting your business? What have you tried before, and why hasn't that worked? Why are you having this conversation? Are you ready to move forward? What do you think the perfect outcome is going to be, and how do you think our solution might be able to find that, depending on where you are in that sales process, sale timeline. And then you're going to have, this is what we do, and do you think this is going to work? And then you close. So 4 or 5 different touch points. If you're getting the same objection, it's probably because something's been brought up, or there's a body language cue or a facial expressions around a certain part in, for a better term, the pitch, which creates that issue. And usually it's going to be confidence. If you want to be confident in something, you have to be competent. And competent comes from role playing, debriefing, reviewing. I use the 3 R's: reaction, response, result. So whenever I say something, what's the reaction I'm getting from the customer? What's the response I'm getting from the customer? And what's that result? Is it a positive reaction, positive response, positive result? Or is it a neutral one? Or is it a negative one? Now, if I'm getting a negative one over and over and over, just don't say that. Find another way to ask that question. And that's what great sales, that's the difference between average salespeople. And I think, to be honest, and this is not to discredit average salespeople, most salespeople have 0 technical understanding of sales. Most, and I'm talking probably 80%. And then you have the really good salespeople that are highly trained, very educated, and understands social cues, reading body language, facial expressions, all that sort of stuff. But most salespeople, and I'm not trying to upset anyone, but most salespeople can't sell that well because they've come from customer service. They were people like them. They moved into sales. Maybe they didn't want to do sales anymore, and now they're the sales manager. Horrible way to run a business.
I find it interesting that some of the stuff that you've touched on there is about responding to people, right? Taking their cues. There's I guess a bit of a trend in more recent times around personality testing and things like that. And in fact, I was actually just talking to someone earlier today who had presented one and was showing me a case study that was used by Mercedes. And the idea is that basically it's a 90-second test, and it can be done with a series of cards that you put in front of people. And depending on the order that they present those cards in is the script or the path that you go down as far as the sales is concerned. I'm not sure how practical it is to be putting cards in front of people.
Nice to do that, yeah.
But the idea of responding to personalities, though, however you do it, whether it's a quick self-assessment or whether it's a pre-assessment of some description, depending on the nature of your business, how much do you think you place in that as far as the sales technique is concerned? Is that worthwhile, or is it really just about being authentic and responding to people?
Look, I think if you understand the technical personality traits, a disc profile, for instance, you got dominant, indifferent, stability and conscious. Everyone's going to be slightly different. So let's say you're talking with an engineer. Engineers hate me as a salesperson because I'm too excited. I ask way too many questions, and they're like, mate, just get to the bloody point, would you? So facts, figures, data, concrete, no opinions. I don't care. That's a high C type, right? Facts, figures. I don't want your opinion. If it's, I don't want any anecdotal examples. I want concrete fact. If you're dealing with a very dominant behavioral type, CEOs, they're sort of very aggressive to build a relationship and rapport with them. The best way to do that is don't. They don't care about you. They just want to know what you've got. Get to the point. Boom, boom, boom. And then after, maybe if I like you, I'll open up the deal into a conversation. When you're looking at this real stable type of people, which is probably 53% of the population, to build a relationship with them, you need to tell them something about yourself. They're very meek and mild and gentle, and probably like the support care workers and the nurses and the darling, like very, very soft, meek people. 53% of the population like that. So when you're dealing with people face to face, it's and the high eyes, they call them, super excited, very extroverted, speak fast, lots of hand gestures. The best way to build a relationship about them is to talk about them or let them talk about themselves. That's the best. Just keep asking them questions about them. You don't say anything and they will love you for it, right? Had the best conversation with Julian. What's he do? Absolutely no idea, but I got to talk about myself for 20 minutes. That's there. And over time, if you know what sort of traits to look for, they're quite easy to spot. Sometimes different cultures are different again, because not everyone is quite, outgoing as sort of the Western cultures and Australians. A pre-qualified personality trait, that'd be pretty amazing if you could get that. But usually sales processes don't come with that type of data, unfortunately. But it just comes down to people skills. I think being authentic is super important. I think selling by not selling is super important, and that's where your authenticity. And having a mentality of service as opposed to a mentality of sales and commissions is where it's at. Anytime I've done door-to-door for 10 years and run a door-to-door sales company for 15, spoken to 100,000 people face to face. That's a lot of doors that I've knocked on. And every time I've gone out there to make money and do some sales and get some commissions to pay for things, the energy is wrong. And that people can feel that I'm trying to get something for nothing, and trying to ask questions to get sales. Every time I've gone out there to enjoy customers, responses, give them a great customer service experience, make them happy, make them smile. Every time I've gone out there, let's see what I can do to help people, my sales has always been much higher. So your focus on where you're actually trying to generate your money from, either giving them service, that's where it's at.
It's amazing how they can smell that desperation, right? When that's the case. But I wanted to bring it back just to the SME space for a little bit. And there are plenty of businesses out there that are having to run, I guess, or oversee the 4 roles that we're each playing here. And sales is a very important one. And I think it's a space that some are more comfortable in than others. And I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask is when is the right time for businesses to look at outsourcing some of that, or at least bringing in some experts in there, as opposed to saying, this is just a role I'm going to have to do myself, even though it's not my core love? Is there a good time to start bringing people in for that?
That's a great question. The best time is when you want to start making money, get someone in to help you. If it's not your core love, and I would say I've been in seminars of thousands of people, and they say, sales seminars or business seminars, sorry. And you've got the sales coach up by there, and they say, who in this room wants, loves sales or wants to be called a salesperson? There's like 3 of us out of 1,000 that put their hand up, and they're like the hardcore salespeople. Every other business owner is like, hell no. Well, sales is a massive, massive part of your business, and whether you love it or not, fall in love with it, because that's where your revenue is coming from. If you don't do any sales, you have 0 revenue. It's not going to come from your finance team. It's not going to come from your social media team unless it's an online business, but that's different again. But if you have a service or a product to sell that's outside of an e-com, right, where you don't actually have to speak to someone to get sales. And I think that's, to be honest, I think that's why e-com's exploded, because if I send enough emails and there's enough people that buy and that, cost per acquisition is not as high, and I can spend more on marketing and I can just send products out, that's amazing business, right? But if you're in a traditional, let's call it a traditional business that needs to go and acquire customers and build relationships and build rapport and nurture them, if you don't like sales, you need to get rid of that mentality as soon as possible, because it's not going to be inspiring for your team. The other thing is, if you're not making sales, you don't have a business. So again, get rid of that mentality. The other thing is, if you really don't want to do sales, then you need to get someone in that loves sales, that is a hunter, not an order taker, and that, number one, understands the sales process intrinsically, which there's not that many people out there that can actually really dig into your business and go, you need to change this is what you need to do. Or what you can do is outsource a whole lot. It is a lot more expensive, but then you don't have to manage it at all. So, and I do think there's going to be a model for that. We're looking at moving that with our business consultancy company, where we'll soon to become an outsourced sales company and just basically have, guns for hire, essentially, because the market is crying for great salespeople, and they're just really hard to find.
And I think it almost brings it back to the beginning of where we started the discussion, in that, the world has changed, right? And the way people are engaging and doing things. I mean, I'm in the process of moving, and out of the 3 quotes that I've asked for, 2 of them are being done virtually. So, just that, and I understand that it's definitely a cost-effective way. It doesn't make any difference really. And so that whole technique of how you're engaging with people and selling has completely changed. And I think that's something that we have to adapt to, right? We businesses have to change. I think the businesses that are sitting there in those old-fashioned ways of doing things have to recognize they are old-fashioned. It's not the way forward.
As soon as I hear, but we've always done that way. And, you've been asked to come in as a performance, coach, and they're like, yeah, but we've always done it that way. It's like, why am I here? If the performance is that good, I wouldn't be standing here, right, in the boardroom of these dinosaur executives that think that if you pay them enough, they'll be more motivated. It's just the world's changed, right? It is a different environment. I hate quotes, and I really encourage companies to not just send a quote, because there's 0 value in it. They don't see your company's ethics. They don't see the morals. They don't see the workmanship in what you do. They don't see the post-sale service. They don't see any customer support. They don't see any of that. All they see is, that's $5,000, that's $4,000. Looks like it's going to be the same job, 0 value. Dealing in the solar space, most companies that sell quotes, the only reason why they're getting deals is because they're the cheapest. What a rubbish way to do business. Like, that's not a sale. You had to drop your pants to get it in the first place. That's terrible. There's 0 sales skills in that. And it takes it, even though it's the benefit of COVID is that now we are literally a global business, and you've got to start thinking that way. We can sell in America, We can sell in everywhere, depending on what the product is. We can sell globally now. And having a meeting like this or a Zoom call is really not uncommon. Not that it was not uncommon before, but it's almost accepted where, I can't come to Sydney just for the weekend and have a face-to-face. Let's just do a Zoom. The other benefit of that, we can now be much, much more efficient. I don't have to be in four cities over the weekend to do 4 meetings. I can do them all in an afternoon. So there are benefits, but yeah, stop sending quotes just as a quote. Engage the customer and really, really set some time. If they're going to, the other thing is, oh no, just send it to me. Like, what's the point? Or you're going to and then the other thing that I really question my clients on, if I send you a quote, there's no value in that. You can't see what we do. You can't see the projects that we've done. There's no value in that. And then for you, if you're going to spend 5, 10, 15, 20 grand on a product, and I just send you a quote and you get one instead of mine's 20 grand and someone else's 18 grand, how do you know that's going to be better for you? How do you know that the solution that 2 grand saves you isn't actually going to cost you 10 grand later on down the track? So, set up some time with your customers and really get them to understand what your company does, the values of the company, what the mission is, and how you can actually serve that customer better by just spending 15 minutes to explain it to you.
I think I better send you the names of the removalist companies that have been talking.
To bring new clients, you reckon?
they're all falling into that trap. Let me tell you. And you can't sort one quote out from the next, and yet there are some wild variations. So it's very interesting. Look, I think we probably could sit and talk about this for much longer, but and we will definitely have you back, Julian, because there's a lot of territory to cover. And thank you for being part of the show today. I might just hand it over quickly to Pierre and Yuri just to see if you got a final word on everything that we've covered and a final tip for our listeners.
Well, all I can say is sold. I was just enjoying the conversation, and there are very precise advices straight to the point. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Julian.
Thanks, Yuri.
Look, I mean, from my side, I think from a finance side, that the sales conversion side is always important, because if you've got 10 guys out there that you're paying wages or salaries for, and one of them is bringing money back in and the other 9 are not, then obviously there's some issues. So I think from my side, it's that sales conversion, understanding the process is incredibly important for a business overall. Like you say, that's what makes the revenue. That's what pays the bills. So I think from my side, thank you very much, Julian. Very insightful.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
And I think, Julian, you said along there, when the people have a sales conversation with you, they think they just had 20 minutes of talking to Julian, and he don't know anything about him. I think we got the reverse. So well done. So thank you for being part of the program. And anyone that wants to throw a topic at us and wants to join us as a guest panelist as well, please hit us up. And we look forward to having your company on the next episode of No Tie C-Suite.